So, as I told you before, this is not a schedule. It's completely mixed and confusing. So right now, you're going to experience the first confusion, a little bit of surprise. So next speaker is not going to be Vlado, not a conf, but it's going to be Rado. This is completely intentional, as I told you before. Ooh. I am relaxed, yes, thank you. So, you can use these spare minutes to actually post some tweets, Instagram stories, whatever you like, just make sure we are noisy. Yes, I see people already reaching out to their phones in their pockets. Okay, as you also may notice, Rado's talk in the schedule is actually not announced. So even we, me and Vlado, his co-organizers, we have absolutely no idea what is he going to speak about. So this is a complete surprise for all of us, so bear with us. He said he came up with a great idea, but you need to really focus and follow to make sure the idea is there. So I think Rado is ready to start. Just a quick introduction, actually. Rado is running the React meetup in Sofia, but also he's one of the best React developers, I guess, in the world, working with Product Hunt and mentoring also developers at AngelList, I believe, teaching them how to do stuff. So, Rado, are you good to go?
I'm born ready. Okay, that's too loud.
All right, a round of applause. Woo!
Yeah, hello everybody. So as I said, this is totally intentional, not Vlado. Like, I'm Rado, like it's here. I'm not shipping stuff. And yeah, actually that's me. That's, you can find me on the internet with this handle. Like the keynote, the presentation will be online here, so you can actually see it. Because usually I noticed on a lot of meetups you see stuff like that. Yeah, so that's the reason. So as Jeanette says, during the day I worked at Product Hunt, and during the night I'm organizing this conference with those wonderful people. And again, like, what was the topic of my talk? Like, the thing about this conference is everybody of us takes something to do, like, and nobody else doesn't know what's happening. Like, the previous exercise was complete surprise for me, as was for you. As for my presentation, actually even my co-organizers don't know what I was going to talk about, and hopefully I know what I'm going to talk about. So yeah, what I'm going to talk about. Like, last week I was in Poland for Elixir Europe, and I was saying, yeah, I have to find a topic where I should speak on my conference. And a friend of mine, a person I met there, told me, got a great idea for a talk. Talking about something called emoji algebra. And I have this, like, already had it in the program. By the way, the idea of the talk was, this was a placeholder since I didn't know what I was going to talk about, so I just put some random emojis there. And when I go to Poland, this guy gives me a great idea. So yeah, because emojis are cool, but actually there is even a movie about them, but there is a lot of math behind them and a lot of stuff. So for example, let's say you have to implement a very simple feature. You have shipping addresses, and you want to show what's the country. And you don't want to just add the country code, you don't want to take 2,000 images with countries, you just want to use the emoji countries. So you just start with the string, let's say BG for Bulgaria, and when you code this JavaScript here, where you just, okay, this was the button. So if you just replace every character, you just add this magic number here, and with this with this emoji, you get the Bulgarian country flags. So in this trick, you can actually have country flags just by having the strings, and that's really cool. Like you just have to remember this weird number. The other nice thing about emojis is they can be combined, they can be joined together. For example, if you have a girl emoji with this weird symbol, a heart and a boy, you get a couple. And this weird symbol is what actually binds people together. It's called zero-white joiner. It's, I have no idea why. I mean, there is a lot of wrong papers about it, but when you write this code in your browser, you would get a couple. And for example, if you add a kid, you get a family as well. And for example, let's say we have a girl and we combine it with our logo, you get an astronaut. And of course, we now have colored emojis, and it's quite simple. You just add a color, you just add the zero joiner, you just the flash, and it's there. And the first time I found it, I was like this, like, whoa, that's so cool, that's like amazing. But I'm not going to talk about emojis today. This is not my talk. This is not the emoji talk. Like, this is a fun talk, but talking about math is like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. Sorry, guys. It seems like you like the talk so far. Yeah, that's the second emoji. Yeah, me right now. So yeah, what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, I killed 2 of the emojis already, and I just have that. So let me actually ask you a question. How many of you are Star Trek fans or watch Star Trek? Raise your hands. Yeah, so every Star Trek fan has this dilemma between, is it Kirk better or is it Picard better? In our JavaScript world, the question is React better or Angular better? I mean, in our case, it's obvious it's React, but we still have a lot of questions. And most of those questions are, I have to put my phone in the airplane mode, totally not professional. And in our case, we have to choose between stuff which is like Redux or MobX or stuff like that. Like in the JavaScript world, we have all those tools, like Martin was talking about, all the legacy code, and we are always fun by this buzzwords-driven design stuff. And this is also great boot writing your front end every 6 weeks. And in the end of the day, we as developers, we are crushed. And we actually have a term for that. It's called JavaScript fatigue. And there is actually some science between why we feel so overwhelmed. There is something which is called paradox of choice. It's very simple. Okay, I hope this is not the fire belt or something like that. So the paradox of choice is explained very simply. A couple of years ago, you go to the store and there is one type of jeans. And you can only buy those, and you're very unhappy because you have no choice. Now you go to the store, you see 100 types of jeans, and you cannot pick anyone because you don't know what's the best. So the middle is always in between. So when we start a JavaScript project, we have all these questions. What framework should I use? How to manage state? How to fetch data? Which router should I use? The big question, what's the most fancy calendar component out there? Or charts? Like, we have all those like small and big questions, but actually, if you think about it, questions have scale. Like, we have big questions, small questions, medium questions, and we have this totally unscientific chart. Here there is a sign which says totally not scientific, but it's a bit cut out, sorry. So the idea here is we have things which are easy to change and things which are hard to change. We have questions which are simple and stuff which is complex. And not all questions we have are equal. For example, we have all those questions, but in reality, the questions look more like that. We have the bigger questions, the medium questions, and the small questions. And let's see how we're going to answer each of those questions. And I need some water here. So, what framework should I use? That's a very interesting question. I mean, we already have it since we're on the react-conf, but still, it's a bad question. The question is wrong. It's not what framework should I use, it's which ecosystem should I choose. Because we have to pick ecosystems which support all the other stuff, and this actually helps us make more decisions, because choosing ecosystems actually forces us into that ecosystem. So when I choose an ecosystem, when I have to make a bit hard decisions, I always go to the history. So I always like turn the wheels back and go back in time and like crash there. And what I do is I look back to the history, because I'm that old nowadays. Yeah, when I was younger, I was the youngest person in the room. Now I'm becoming the older person in the room, and that's kind of scary. So I'll look back at the history of the JavaScript ecosystem. So the real JavaScript frameworks or ecosystem were actually become in 2005, with prototype.js. Who of you actually have used prototype.js recently? Oh, know about it. No, just know. I mean, nobody uses it recently, like it's dead, but oh, okay, cool. I'm not that old. So prototype.js was actually the kind of the first big JavaScript library. It was quite cool, but it had some problems. And in 2006, we had something called jQuery. I don't know if you guys still remember that. It was kind of old. And now, then we have this very big boom to 2010 when something called Backbone.js come to the scene and actually starts introducing us into the simple component pattern. Like before that, between 2006, 2010, there were a lot of efforts to have like frameworks, but they were very complicated. Each of them has to build over and over and over again. And Backbone actually was like 1,000 lines of library, and it was quite cool. Also, surprisingly, in 2010, something which is called AngularJS actually Angular, yeah, JS, come to the scene, which is surprising. It actually got popular like 1 or 2 years later. And then in 2013, React was born, and now it's 2018. So when you just look at the ecosystems, like the big ecosystems, there are not actually that many changes if you think about it. Like since 2013, yeah, Angular is still around in its new clothes without the JS in the end. Backbone, like jQuery, they were all like in the legacy land of happiness and unicorns. And to 2018, there are not any major breakthroughs in an ecosystem place. There are like other places, but honestly, if you have to think about it, if you have to be serious, you have to pick one of the big four right now. Like the 2 big ones or the 2 smaller ones. Like Ember.js is always a good framework which nobody uses, and Vue.js is always fun, but in the end of the day, the big 2 right now are Angular and React. And that's, I mean, there isn't a wrong choice here. Whatever you pick from here actually would work and would do your job. But I mean, we are at react-conf, so we choose React. But this is like a complex decision. It's very hard to reverse, but you don't have so many choices, honestly. Like, yeah, you can try some fancy new stuff, but usually when we start a new project and we have the full flexibility, okay, what we have to choose a technology stack, we choose 2 things. First, we choose the thing we already know because we want the project to succeed, or we pick something which we don't know just because we want to learn it. Like, and that's a not so hard choice. And the other cases, the requirements come from the business. A client comes from you and says, I want to use Angular, and you're like, okay, I mean, you want it, you use it. Like, it's very hard to convince people, but also there isn't any wrong choices in choosing one of the 4 big ecosystems. So yeah, we are done with first choice. Let's go to the next ones, the middle ones. Those are actually, for me, the trickiest one, because those are always in the middle, and there are also a lot of choices there, and they're really hard to change, and they actually couple to your domain logic. If you have to change an ecosystem, most probably you would push to start like a new code base. It won't happen, or it will be a failure, but you would want to do that. And if you, for example, want to switch from MobX to Redux, or change a router, or something which is core of like this middle part, it's harder. So those decisions, because React is cool, I really like React, but React is like a bit like this. They just give you the menu, and you have to build the Eiffel Tower by yourself. So again, let's go back to history, by the way. Like, we have so many choices in the middle round, like how to fetch data, how to handle state, how to communicate between components. And let's go back to history. So 2013, the last time when we were back, React was there. In 2014, Facebook released something which is called Flux, which is a bidirectional movement of information of state to your application. Then, in 2015, one of Redux was born, and it was based on the Flux ideology of having data passing to only one direction. Surprisingly, in this year, something close to my heart was published as a specification. It's called GraphQL. And in 2016 was Apollo was built. It's a library which handles GraphQL. And it's also a library which now handles state and handle all of that. So if we think about it, it's a very interesting thing. In 2014 and 15, we get two new concepts: bidirectional data flow, and then we have declarative data fetching with GraphQL. And those are like concepts. And then each year afterwards, we have libraries which build on those concepts. And honestly, like right now, like Redux, Apollo, if you're using GraphQL data fetching, are like the standards for that. So for 2016 to 2018, yeah, there are a lot of tries. Like we have, I know at least 10 Redux smaller versions and Redux removal of like boilerplate libraries. And I know MobX as well, but it's still, those are like the dominant, like Redux is still like the dominant architecture platform right now, and we don't have any breakthroughs there, and it's not so much new stuff there. Like most of the new stuff comes in another place. Also, again, there are some good choices, bad choices in this area, like choosing your architecture. Should I use MobX, Redux, build something my own? Is something you really should think about and be very careful. Like this is the place you actually should be very careful about. Because usually when we start to do a research, sometimes stuff like this happens. And yeah, it's this is also a very good, I use this GIF for refactoring talks. Sometimes this happens with bad refactorings. You try, you push back and bam. Yeah, so those choices are really hard ones. I cannot help you much except have faith, everything will be all right, everything will be good. So let's go to the smaller choices, the choices we actually have to make every day. Because when you write the project, a lot of those things are set once and you don't change them so often, but you have every day, should I use this calendar library? Should I use this button? Should I use this chart? Like those are so many questions, and it gets very overwhelming. Like, let's do something. Let's imagine we are starting a new project. I imagine when I start a new project, it looks like that. This is like my visual presentation of the new project. I'm very happy. I do some pair programming with my colleague, and I'm like so happy about it. And at some point, I'm noticing the project starts to look like that. Like, starts to be a bit broken over the edges. And yeah, and I noticed, okay, I think I might start painting from the wrong side. But yeah, let's keep calm. Let's keep calm. Let's take a step back. And actually, let's do a trivia. Who is developer's worst enemy? There is options. First is the designers. Come on. Any designers here? Don't run. It's not you. It's the QA. Somebody said that. I mean, of course, we have the sysadmins. They're always blamed. You know, servers are always down. Everything is burning. We have the project owners, of course. We have to like always blame them for something. Some of my friends actually blame Santa Claus because it broke their hearts, because when they found out Santa Claus didn't exist, they start believing in magic and goodness. So it's also problems with the programmers. Or maybe one of the problems, in my opinion, for developers' worst enemies is code coupling. Like, yeah, for me it's code coupling, like big spoiler because I am a bit out of time now. So yeah, one of the biggest problems we developers actually face when we are building, especially taking all those small decisions, is we are creating invisible couplings between our components, between our systems, between the stuff we do. And this makes every change harder, and this makes the situation when we pull one string and something else changes. Like, for example, I start running and this thing starts coming down. Like, this is a very weird coupling. I really don't know how it's happening that. So it wouldn't be a talk of mine if I don't show some code, because we as developers are very good at discussing abstract things, like pretend to be very smart and thoughtful. And we always argue about stuff which doesn't matter, like Vim, Emacs, Atom, which is more important, and it doesn't matter in the end of the day. And we argue because most of the, or tab versus spaces, or this charting library against the other charting library, like stuff which doesn't matter. We like to really talk on an abstract level. But I have noticed that when we just sit on a screen with Vim, of course, and we look at the code, we tend to agree with each other, because when we go to like the basics, we all want to do a good job. So let's see this small component This is like a small page from somewhere. So it has all those, come on. Okay. So it has a lot of imports. It has some state where it has like a clock, which has like some time interval. It updates a code, then updates a time. It's a bit long, so we have to scroll it a bit. So it's, we use something called Jumbontron from Bootstrap. We have some class names here because designers. We use some fancy timer because with some other style names. We use some date time here. We use Moment.js, of course, for formatting. We use and we have some links for the venue. This might be from some conference site, which we have, or we know, or we don't know, or we want to have. And this is like, it's a very simple page. It's not very big. But if we think about it, what's the reasons to change something? Like we as developers, it's a very natural for a developer to know what don't repeat yourself. Don't repeat yourself. People think, yeah, I shouldn't have the same code in two places. I have to extract it. And that's actually create a lot of invisible coupling. What don't repeat yourself actually means is things which have the same reason to change has to be grouped together. So when we change it in one place, we don't have to change it in the other. So if you see two pieces of code which looks the same, but they just look the same just because accident, and not because the business or the domain logic makes it. So what's the reason to change for our component? So right now our component can change because of itself or because of some of its dependencies. So we have, in this component you see, we have all these dependencies together grouped. And it's cool, it's one component, it's very easy. One of these dependency changes, I change one of the components. Then I start to reusing these dependencies in other components, and then when I change this middle dependency, I have to change one of the other dependencies. And then we become something like this. And we start flipping tables and hating our lives, start drinking and organizing conferences and other things like that. So when you deal with problems like that, you should do something, you should control the changes. The changes shouldn't control you, you should be in control. And how happens this? So let's look at this way. We have a component, it has two dependencies. And we have another component, which depends on our previous component. Here, the second component, technically, it only depends on our previous component. So if I'm the one who controls the changes here, and the dependent changes over here. So if I add more components, I'm in control here. Yeah, if those little bastards change here, I have to change this one. But those 2, 3 don't know about the changes below. And that's called abstractions. So in our example, let's see it in this way. We have page, which is our page, and we can actually extract Moment.js and the fancy timer into our time component. Why? Because tomorrow there will be even more fancy timer or awesome finder timer or something like that. And when we change this, we don't need to change all those pages because they don't depend on a single component. So in code, this looks like that. We have our fancy time, like this thing here, and we just extract it into a smaller components. And we remove all the dependencies from that file. And yeah, this component is now simpler. It has its own dependencies, but those dependencies are localized in this small component. Like we are wrapping this external component. And also we are reducing the API of this component. So if the fancy timer developer decides that daytime doesn't sound appealing as a property and want to name it nighttime, we just change it in one place, and that kind of works. Also, another change I want to do here is things like Moment.js, which are not like a component-based. People tend to use them all over the place, and because they're just JavaScript. And what I tend to do is I'm going to add wrappers on top of them, which I call utils, and I'm just narrowing down the Moment.js API. Because Moment.js is great, for example, but it's quite big. Very, 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 very big. And here is how I do it in code. I have my utility function, I get this export time. I have another file which is called utils where I just expose the Moment.js and actually have a better API here. I have a different formats for full time, for a clock time, or for everything other like this. And notice that the utils are grouped with this time component. And that's on purpose because nobody else in our systems care about time. But if we have some other place where we need to use the time utils, we can just move this to a root level place and handle it there. Like we are still in the control of the change. So I don't think I have much time left, so let's be a bit faster. So here you notice that we have so much state here, and this is very reusable state, but we have the render here, which is quite big. So this can be moved to its own component, which is called clock, and it uses this very nice new pattern of function as props. And we can extract the clock here, and again, we reduced our dependencies quite a bit. And the code looks cleaner. The other change here is, you notice this Jumbotron thing. We have these different styles of it, and most probably we'd need it in different pages. And it depends from React Bootstrap, but Bootstrap it's not fancy anymore. People use something called Material. I have no idea what it is, but people always tell me that I should use it. I'm just waiting it for the next new thing, so I don't have to replace it twice. So what I do here is I'm just going to move this Jumbotron into like a root component called Jumbotron. Like I'm not very imaginative with names, sorry. And I'm going to wrap the other components. I'm going to hit some of the complexities which my project needs, like titles and all of that. And in this way, my code even looks even better. Like I just have like a simple functional page, which is just Jumbotron with title conference, with clock. And now I actually don't need to explain you what this is about. Like before, remember when I show you all these lines of code, you have no idea what this page was rendering. And now I hope you actually know what this page is rendering. I don't. Another place of change is, notice those strings here. Okay, okay. My bad signal, yeah. So notice those strings for the links. Those are hard-coded strings. But what happens if I decide that this is not a conference, so the link should be not a schedule? I have to go and change these strings everywhere. And what I do is, I extract just a file called paths, and I just move all the paths as functions, and I use these functions. So a reason to change, a reason for you to change, you just change it in one place and everything works. Okay, what else? So we use these paths. The other thing I want to notice here is links. I don't like the React router. And you notice how we depend on it because it's such a simple function. And I have migrated 3 times the router on our application. And each time I wanted to do like this. Just have my own link, have the other component wrapping this link. So when I move to something better like found, I can just change that and forget about it. Not just changing every file, every dependency. And also in this place, you can actually, if you don't like the 2, you can have it as a href and other stuff and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically how you can handle like small decisions. Okay, that's cut a bit. Okay, no worries, you can see it on the slides. So yeah, all these like small refactorings, like there is this book here. Oh, actually not this one, sorry. There is this book which, oops, sorry. I'm not very good with the clicker today. So Krasi actually made a new book which you have all those nice cool patterns you can use to abstract and clean up your stuff. And yeah, I think he has some books here around, or are locked somewhere, as we locked him today because we were scared that he was going to run away. So yeah, that's all, folks. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great time. Да, имаме ли време? Не. Okay, let's do a panel.
Okay, we're keeping the same format. By the way, apologies, I forgot to introduce Krasi because I know he's very famous. Are you famous? Yeah. Yes. So
now you are.
Yeah, Rado told me one of the top 4 JavaScripters in Bulgaria.
Don't tell who are the other ones, yes, because everybody else would hate me.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, let's keep this as a secret. But what I know about Krasi, he's running the Notcast podcast. I'm also listening to it, and I understand what they're speaking about, so that's a good sign. So, is there a volunteer from the audience who would like to sit on a chair
and ask me questions?
Ask a question or have a comment?
Don't worry, we are friendly.
They don't bite. Anyone? Okay, guys, you can do it on your own.
Okay, so you started with this emoji thing.
Yeah.
Emoji math. It was cool.
Thank
Do you remember any funny comment or PR review or something? Because I don't have an example, but do you remember some funny like a comment that you brought to your colleagues or something?
Yeah, I mean, we used emojis quite a bit in our application, to be honest. Some of, like the country thing, we use it already. We used a lot of emojis in our pull requests, in our code, in our lives.
Okay, okay. So you, yeah, 4 minutes. Okay, this should be enough for this question.
Let's be quick. Let's be quick.
Okay, so you mentioned Backbone.
Yeah.
When Backbone was released, there were lots of people which adopted the framework quite easily. Like it was integrated. I think the same happened for React. Do you have any idea why these two libraries were adopted so easy?
Yeah, because they actually made it they had a very small API, like they have a very small surface area to actually know it to start going, and they were very simple to know and integrate piece by piece. And they actually integrated this mindset of splitting things into components and make you think, okay, I have a component, and they start rethinking stuff. Like React make us rethink how we do CSS, how we do data fetching, element format, and Backbone actually make us think, okay, what's a widget, what's a component, and what's a template, and what's all of that, and what's actually MVC, how the MVC works, because we all remember the view there, but they actually had a model, they have the collections, they have something terrible called the router, and it was very simple to adopt, and it was just a code you would write yourself. It was so small, so you actually can read it and understand it. And with React, it's a bit more complicated, but its API is so small in the beginning, and they're even making it smaller with by day. So that's the reason it's very easy to start with.
Yeah, I remember that I was able to understand how Backbone works, but just reading the code, it was like 300 lines of something. Yeah, so I have 2 minutes, but I prefer to keep my questions for the next speaker.
That's great.
So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
You can ask them about my lecture as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.